Okay, hopefully this is working. Welcome back to another live stream. I just got a question under my latest YouTube video, which goes like, you always make mastering effects from the beginning, but are you aware of minus 6 dB in the mix? Is it possible to make a video of the tricks of the mix? And first of all, thanks for the question, and thanks for listening to my music and watching these videos. I kind of think I see where the confusion is coming from. Let me answer it like this. So, and I'm going to talk about of where this is coming from. So, first of all, there's like three types of, or maybe even more, but let's just talk about three ways of making music, essentially. The first would be is if you do everything yourself. So this is often called in-the-box producing. So I'm just gonna name it like that. So this is in the box, and project, you do everything yourself in one project, because this is very important to specify that this is happening in one project file. And this is how I work, for example. And the thing I need to say about this is that everything, so if I break down the whole a whole track to the creation process, it consists of three things. So first of all is the production, then there's the mixing, and there's the mastering. All three stages are happening inside one project file, which means I produce in the same project, I mix in the same project, and I master in the same project. This is how I work, and this is how I would highly recommend everyone to work if you do everything yourself. Now there's another way, second way, which is in this example, you also still work kind of in the box, but not really. What this means is that so I don't have any sort of analog equipment here, except for my audio interface, obviously. But if I were to have outside compressors or outside limiters, which are usually higher quality than their plugin counterparts, I could use them in my workflow. But because they are sometimes introducing too much latency into production projects, it might be worth to set up another project file where you can focus only on the mix and the master, or even just a mix or just a master project, where you use those analog outside of the box equipment, but there's still you do everything yourself. In this case, I can understand why someone is using two projects or even three, like what I said. But I would still if you're mostly working with plugins, I would highly recommend to just do everything yourself in one project. And there's the third thing is where I'm going to talk about this 6 dB thing most of the time, is when it's not you, when you only do the production. So you only produce, but different people are working on everything else. Professionals usually. Now, professionals will be able to take care of mixing and mastering for you, but they cannot. So if you already have a heavily compressed mix, or if you already have a clipping mix, they can do anything with that. So whenever you hear this advice that you should leave this much headroom or that much headroom or this or that, really everything about this, what this means is that they are coming from the frame of mind that you're only a producer and you don't take care of the mixing almost at all. And in this case, when you send something to a mixing engineer, it's highly advisable that you leave enough headroom for him or her. minus 6 dB is usually enough. I've worked with people who recommended minus 12 dB. There's all sorts of different setups for this, but I personally never leave this headroom because I work in I work like this. So I do everything in one project file and I do everything myself. So I already have the as your question already mentioned this, I already have an output chain set up, and I go from there. So I don't really feel the need to work at minus 6 dB and then to export everything out again and then get another project file just to again work with in the box plugins. It just doesn't make much sense for my own workflow. So to summarize everything, this minus 6 dB question, I understand this confusion, but this is coming from the professional world, where mixing and mastering engineers will ask you to leave them headroom so that they can work with the mix better than probably how you would be able to work with it. And if you do everything yourself, I highly recommend do everything inside one project file. So you already have on the output chain set up a rough mixing template and then a limiter. I will show you in a minute how I do this. Or if you have analog equipment, such as like outside compressors or outside limiter that you trust better than a plugin, you can just produce inside one project, and then to avoid the latency, you can produce inside one project using only your plugins, or I don't know really how to phrase this any different. High cipher. And so where was I? Yeah, so I think I addressed everything here. And is it possible to make a video of the tricks of the mix? I cannot really show how a professional mixing or mastering engineer would work, but I can show you how I work and what I consider this in the box project, and when you work on everything yourself inside one project file. So this is how my template looks like. This is whenever I start up Logic. This is something how I have a bunch of different templates, but this is the one I usually do when I work on stuff for myself. So I will only talk about the output chain for now. I have a multiband compressor. Now it's everything is set to 0, and all the attack and release times are set to the same numbers and milliseconds, because whenever I start working on something, I kind of have a rough idea of what direction I want to go with it, but like how should I put this? So these attack and release times are going to be dependent on how smooth I want the track, or how punchy I want the track, what genre I'm working with, and how much BPM it is. I personally usually go for smoother sounds, which always means like a little bit slower attack times, or I mean like faster, so the numbers will be lower. That's what I meant to say. Okay, thanks for letting me know that the audio has stopped. I don't know what happened. All right, so back to this point. I don't know what has just happened. I think there's something with OBS going on, but I'll check this one later. So this is my C4 and this is my C2, and so feel free to copy these compressor settings, because this is going to give everyone, not just myself. Thanks for letting me know once again. So this is going to give a very good starting point to everyone who wants to work on like a song, and so for me these things are always there to be able to start working on ideas right away and start to. Yes, I do have. I use Restream Chat is the name of this application, where I can just see everything on this other monitor that I have. So copying these channels, copying these effects with the settings, I mean, could give anybody a good starting point to just start producing right away. And last but not least, I have the limiter. So first of all, like what these plugins could be considered as, this is my mixing chain, for example, and this is my mastering chain, essentially. Like a professional person would probably approach this situation from a little bit different perspective, but this is how I do it, because I mostly care about the production, and I personally believe that I can set up good enough mixes. If there's something that needs to be done by a professional, I can send it to a professional, and then obviously I would bounce out the production without all these effects. So I would turn off everything, stamp down the project, and this way I would even create this headroom that they are usually asking for, and I would stamp down the project like this, and then send it to a mixing or a mastering engineer, or depending on what I want, obviously. So talking about the limiter, I usually use this Frop filter to Pro L2. I tried out many different limiters so far. This is my favorite, and it's usually set to this transparent setting. I start with these numbers again. You will need to like listen to what are you doing, and how do these knobs are reacting to what you do and what you're producing. Really, it's really hard to give any sort of general advice about these things. Does compressing all your audio to a lower dB increase the amount of noise in the track? If there's already background noise in the audio files you're working with, it's possible if you also bring that one back. But I think nowadays, if you're working with anything that's produced by a synthesizer, or where something is recorded in a professional environment, it's going to be very rare that something will have such high noise amount that it would be problematic to compress a track and then bring it up in level and then have too much noise with it. This could be the case with like non-professional live recordings, for example, but why would you compress that? So or when you try to record live singing of yourself at home, that could happen. Or like right now my MacBook is making quite a bit of noise with the fans. If I were to compress this signal, especially when I'm not talking, so this would also come up in volume. Yes, but when you're working with professional sounds, this is very rarely a problem. So to illustrate what this chain does and how I would adjust it, I'm just gonna try to do something here real quick. Is the audio still working? Yeah, hopefully. Yeah, so I mean, the other compressors, yeah, just a little bit, but the limiter doesn't yet have had to work at all on anything. Now, sometimes when working, especially with more classical genres, for example, you do not really want to use any sort of compression. Sorry, it's not necessary. But in my experience working with electronic genres, most of the time, at least one, a compressor like one single band is going to help your limiter do a better job than how it could do it without additional help, or like really, I don't know how to put it in any other way. So for example, if I have only one kick drum, let's add the bass line to this one. Something really simple. I'm not trying to produce the next hit song right now. Now, when I hear this crunchiness, that means that this limiter is working too hard. So I have two options here in relation to the kick and the bass. I can either just get the levels to a lower point, or maybe compress the signals individually so that they are they use different or less space, or I can sidechain this bass to the kick, which I also do using a compressor. So this is I set up my template in a way where I have this ghost kick drum going on all the way down, and this bass is very intelligently ducking down where the kick is playing, so there's no clashing. So this is one of the most basic mixing advice that I could give to anyone. Essentially, mixing trick, I would say, is to get everything out of the kick drum's way if you do not want to over compress your signals, because there's also another option, like, or even you could use a bit crusher, for example, like drive this up, I don't know, like 8 dB, and then bring it down 8 dB. But then the signal itself is already going to be distorted. So obviously we can do the same thing with a compressor, or like just another like regular limiter, like the Pro L2, or I have these L3 plugins from Waves. These would do a very similar thing, but I personally always go for sidechaining whenever I have the chance. And because I see there's like still 1.2 dB that I can, or even more, that I can make use of, I can drive these levels higher. And without really, these plugins are not even working. With these plugins working, I can probably go even higher than this. Yeah, so for example, like this. Hey Anna, thank you. Thanks for watching. Just by doing this, I already have a working kick and bassline combination. Now, without any sort of processing, I'm going into the red, and well, not yet, but yes. So hopefully my point comes across, that what I want to have for myself, for example, and what I would highly recommend for everyone else, is to have this output chain going on already whenever you start producing, because it's going to help you lay down the ideas much faster than how fast you could be if you just start producing and you go into these clipping zones, you try to adjust that, and you need to take care of these micro details, which can be shaved out by just adjusting these thresholds, for example. and then you can go even louder if you want. But it's not even about the loudness right now, but just so that you don't really have to spend your time leveling anything, because it's just you can just focus on the production itself. So this is what I would highly recommend for everyone. Yeah, so hopefully this answered your question, and thanks once again, and